All right, so 2 weeks from right now, the phones will be buzzing, and we will be in a free agency frenzy, I'm told. Right now, we're just trying to make sense of everything that is going to go down when the new league year opens. Welcome to yet another edition of NFL Now. I hope you're having a super Tuesday. From our newsroom in Los Angeles, I'm Andrew Siciliano. We have yet to officially, and officially is the key word here, see any team use the franchise tag. But if one does, let us tell you now, it does not necessarily mean that that player will be back on your favorite team, because recent history, like last year, for example, has plenty of stories to show otherwise. Take Jadeveon Clowney. The Texans used the tag last year. Clowney did not report for camp. And then Labor Day weekend, the Texans traded him to the Seahawks for 2 players and a pick. The Seahawks also pulled their own sign and trade. They tagged Frank Clark. They sent him in April to the Chiefs. They get a 1, they get a 2. Clark gets 5 years and $105 million. And kind of a triangulation here. The Chiefs did the same with Dee Ford. They tagged him. They traded him to the Niners for a 2 in this coming draft in April. Ford gets a new deal worth $87 million, or maybe if you break it down, really, it's a 1-year, $20 million deal. You get my point. A tag does not necessarily mean your favorite player is back. Ian Rapoport knows that. Tom Pelissero knows that. We also know right now that the window is open for teams to use the tag, but officially that paperwork, Ian, has not been submitted for anybody. So, do you guys think, Ian, go first, we see a tag and trade deal this year?
You know, last year it seemed somewhat revolutionary to tag and trade a player. I think by this year, considering how many potential tag and trade possibilities there are, it will become the norm. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, a lot of the guys we're talking about potentially, Yannick Ngakoue, who of course said yesterday he did not want to sign a long-term deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, potentially Matt Judon with the Ravens, potentially Chris Jones with the Kansas City Chiefs. All those are possible tag and trade options. And the reason why, Tom, there's just not a lot of pass rushers or guys who affect the quarterback in free agency. There's Jadeveon Clowney, who negotiated that he not be allowed to be franchised. Very smart on his part. There's Robert Quinn, top flight pass rusher with the Cowboys last year. There's Dante Fowler. There's just not a lot of them besides those names I mentioned. That should cause teams to say, you know what, let's trade for someone.
Another tag and trade possibility, Matt Judon with the Baltimore Ravens. It certainly seems as if at this point the Ravens are kind of looking to see exactly how the market is going to set before they decide how to proceed with their very good young pass rusher. You mentioned a couple of the others. Yannick Ngakoue is an interesting situation because this is a guy who's had a high level of productivity in the NFL. He's still only 24 years old and has made clear publicly in his mind there is no negotiation. He is done. He wants out of Jacksonville at a time the Jaguars do still have the right to apply that franchise tag and be able to keep him, see whether or not potentially things can work out or whether or not potentially they can do a trade. And as for Chris Jones, there's no bad blood there between him and the Kansas City Chiefs. But if you're Jones, you saw how Dee Ford got paid after that trade to the 49ers. You saw how Frank Clark got paid right next to you after getting traded over from Seattle. Certainly the price tag is going to be high on Chris Jones here. Another one that people within the NFL are definitely watching.
Yeah, just because you use the tag on a D lineman, a pass rusher, does not mean you're going to get traded. DeMarcus Lawrence got the tag. He got a long-term deal. The Ravens won with Zadarius Smith is interesting. With Judon, interesting because Zadarius Smith last year, C.J. Mosley as well, 2 core defensive players left because they did not want to meet that considerable free agent price tag. All right, Odell Beckham Jr., Ian. We're not just shamelessly working him into the show, or maybe we are. The door was left open. Tom's giving us a look. The door was left open last week by Andrew Berry on a possible trade. You know, he certainly did not draw a line in the sand and say there's no way. Oh, no, we lost Ian. Now he's back.
No, I'm here. I'm
okay.
Back. Everything's good.
Read between the lines on some Browns stuff here as to whether or not you think he's back.
You can never quite know what nuggets you're going to pick up at the Combine, spending the many hours that we all did in the lovely restaurants and bars of the Indianapolis area. But here's one. As the Cleveland Browns get set to unveil some new uniforms in April, they've done some of the shoots, very confidential, hopefully for them. Nothing leaks. Everybody hates that. But among the players very, very involved in their uniform reveal is Odell Beckham Jr. So if you wondered, is this organization planning to have him for 2020? The answer very clearly is yes, because he is going to, among other reasons, model their new uniforms. Throw all that into a big pile when you consider that Odell also is probably going to be more involved in the offseason program than he has been and much healthier than he was last year. It sounds like he will be a Brown in 2020.
Certainly, Odell Beckham Jr. does need a lot of encouragement to show up on a catwalk and model uniforms. But you mentioned, Ian, will be the thing that's worth watching here is going to be whether or not he does participate in some of those voluntary activities that he did not last year after the trade from the New York Giants. Important to note Odell's contract when discussing any even possibility of a trade. The Browns owe him $14.25 million for 2020. Almost all of that becomes fully guaranteed on March 20th. If they were to trade him away, he'd still count $12 million on their cap this season. And just given the Browns' track record, you would certainly look at the talent on the roster and say, this is a guy who can help them win now, as opposed to just eating up a chunk of their cap and playing someplace else.
So, not to throw water on this whole thing, but Derek Carr was part of the Raiders' big reveal in Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and that has not ended speculation. But I do think, Ian, yes, if you're a Browns fan, this would be a positive report.
That also, are we sure that's not meaningful for the Raiders?
I would think it is.
Same.
Yeah, people are
Go on.
Still speculating because we're 51 days from the NFL draft. All right, I had Mike McCarthy on the set last week. Friday, no Thursday. I'm losing track of days in Indianapolis, and I tried to get him to say something about Jason Witten. All he would say is, well, I met with Jason Witten for around 30 minutes, and he repeated that same thing on the podium with the reporters a couple of minutes after that. I would have to think, Ian, that it's either the Cowboys or bust if Witten continues to play football. Are we right here?
I'm not so sure that you're right. And, you know, this is something that came up. Our friend Clarence Hill mentioned Witten not expected back with the Cowboys. From what I've heard, I would say that is where I believe things stand as well. This sounded much more like a Jason Garrett thing than a Cowboys thing. And obviously with Garrett, I don't know if you guys heard, but he's no longer the coach of the Cowboys. It sounded like Witten's potential return to Dallas probably went with him. So then you start to figure, could he land with Garrett in New York? That would be, it seems at this point, the only other option for him. We also have some pretty good tight ends there. I'm not even sure that Joe Judge starting a new program with the Giants would entertain that, but that would seem to be his other option.
63 catches for Jason Witten last season in his return from the broadcast booth, but he only averaged a little over 8 yards per catch. He doesn't run as well as he used to. He turns 38 years old before next season. You just have to wonder, and in talking to people within the league, there's not a lot of gas left in the tank. So who has that role? We know that Witten's a really good locker room guy, but who would want to bring him in, give him enough snaps and enough money to make it worth his while to finish his career someplace other than Dallas? A lot of moving parts. Not impossible for him to play someplace else, which he has left the door open for in the past.
All right, Jason Witten says he doesn't want to coach just yet, would like to play some football. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Tom. Stay right there, guys. Other news, Giants player rep Nate Solder says he's pulled around 15 players in his locker room, mostly minimum salaried guys, and they all say that they would vote for the new CBA, vote thumbs up. He tells Peter King, quote, this is a great deal for the core players. Tom Pelissero told us yesterday that there were 9 hours of meeting between the NFLPA and the owners to try to put the fine print down onto paper on Sunday. Talks continued Monday. Judy Batista joins us now as well.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Judy. Where stands this process as we speak today?
Still going. They're still trying to put it all down on paper. And then the hope is to get the CBA finally out to players maybe by the end of this week so that they have some time to read it. You want them to read it and contemplate it and ask questions of their agents, of their player reps, and then get the vote back. The expectation is still that a vote will be done in plenty of time to start the league year on time. Nobody really wants to have to push back the start of free agency, maybe least of all of us who have to cover it. But the expectation is that it'll still be done in plenty of time for March 18th to start the league year. But they're still getting it all down on paper.
one key is they didn't want to rush this process. The NFLPA in particular did not want anybody to come back, whether it's the player reps, the players themselves, and say, I didn't know what I was voting for, which was an issue in some of the criticism they heard back with the 2011 deal. So as Judy mentioned, the attorneys for both sides continuing to meet.